I forgot to say that last night I didn't do any coherence breathing because I was too sleepy. I laid in bed kind of sleepy for about an hour, trying not to just doze off before I took my meds, and at a certain point I realized I had forgotten to do my coherence breathing, and I felt too sleepy to do it. And I knew it was a bit of a risk because it was something I was doing to help my heart feel restful and go to sleep. But I didn't need it. So I really feel like I've transitioned from tiredness and medication and needing medication to sleep to just naturally feeling sleepy. And it feels so good. And today was a wonderful day. I went on a hike in the mountains, and I will show you a few clips of the beauty. And then we went to a river after, and first I saw a frog that was the same color as the rock, so I totally spotted it. And then I spotted a little swimming snake, and it was really cute. And then after that, a friend of mine spotted a tiny little turtle. And I didn't get pictures because I was in the water and I didn't have my phone, but it was really cool because we spotted all those cute little things within less than 5 minutes. So I've gone back into noticing beauty and noticing life, and life noticing me. Yesterday when I was walking, I just looked over and there was a bunny laying in the dirt, and it was the exact same color as the dirt. So it's not something that I picked out by focusing on it, but it was picked out of my peripheral vision and directed my focus. And that's what I talked about before, how the peripheral vision, the whole visual field, starts to choose to look at life and beauty. So there's a choice in the peripheral, which we don't make in terms of ego focusing, that then directs our eyes and moves our eyes to look at that. And that can only happen with relaxed perception. So that's a good sign. And also the last 3 days, I haven't felt as much like I need to go home. I felt more like, oh, I can stay till July and enjoy the beauty, because I'm enjoying the beauty more these last few days. And sometimes when I go too far into beauty, that's not good either, because then sometimes at some point I crash, especially if I'm being hyper insightful. It seems to short circuit my nervous system. But I'm hoping that with all these nutrients that helps to fuel the balance and the harmony within my system. It makes sense that if the brain is working in more energetic ways, that it will need more nutrients and minerals. And we see light, and perception is light, and minerals are frequencies of light. So it makes sense to process all the light. We need more minerals and more nutrients in general. And if this really works, I will look more into what this stuff does exactly. And yeah, so it was a super nice day. Tomorrow is Monday, and I might go back to that river and hang out in it because it's going to dry up at some point. And I thought of a little acronym going from having a diagnosis in the DSM to DSN, Dialogue Supernova. And also, there's a new kind of equality, energy quality. And I thought of another one going from a blog to a vlog to a diablog. And I have 13 more pages left in my notebook. And this was the end of that big burst of writing I did. So it seems a little more disjointed than the rest. So I might just read some of it for the sake of showing what I was writing at the end of that burst. And like I said, I do want to get to the end of the notebook and then see what I want to do from there. So I'll just read it. I won't just keep saying, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote, like I usually do. But I did write, who do I want to share energy with? And this is an important question, because that's one of the mistakes we can make in map consciousness, is trying to share this energy with everyone. But then at some point, when that attempt fails, we don't share it with anybody, and then it gathers, and then it explodes, and then our brain kind of is in confusion. What about gross national ecstasy? And this is something that we as transconscious altruist maniacs might be concerned with, and it might be a characteristic of that. And can we go from Homo sapiens to Homo manians? And part of the process of map consciousness is how we get into contact with a lot of words. We're channeling, we're having new insights and perceptions, and we're saying a lot of words and thinking a lot of words, and maybe saying too many words and thinking too many words. But I feel like when that process first starts, it's pretty explosive, but I feel like eventually the brain calms down and insight knows when to create words and knows when to share words. But at first that insight process wants to talk about everything and create words about everything, because usually our brains are always creating words about everything in terms of thought, in terms of the past. So when we're in insight in the present, the brain still is creating a lot of words based on the present and associating it to the past, and it's just this big jumble. So part of the process is learning our relationship with these words, with these insights, and also knowing when to relate them, and developing a relationship with our visions, and seeing that seeing in relationship is vision. And perception exists in the space. It exists in the relationship. And I also had an insight about how the meaning that we usually extract from something is partial. So if I see a tree and I am a paper manufacturer, I will see certain meanings and utilize the tree in that way. And it's very partial. It's not holistic. But if one is in contact with the tree and the whole and relationship and Gaia, one will see and extract and harvest different meaning from looking at that tree. So the way that we look at things, the way we approach things, is going to change the way that we make meaning out of that which we see. And so that goes along with mania and map consciousness as well. It changes our approach to life. It changes the meaning that we extract. It changes what we value and find important. And map consciousness and mania is just a seed. And it needs to share that energy and receive some kind of feedback from the environment in order to grow. Just like any seed needs nutrients, and it also needs some kind of feedback from the environment. So in terms of the approach to life, it's the manic approach to life. And a lot of that has to do with fun and laughter, which I haven't really gotten into in the self that I was diagnosed. I was just laughing all the time, and that's really what allowed me to move through the process and heal and have a lot of fun and enjoy the people around me. And I'm grateful for that, and it would be nice to get back to that. Perhaps that's something I can focus on in the next year. And there's a great Krishnamurti quote that says, "There is an efficiency inspired by love that is greater than the efficiency of the machinery." And when we perceive something as false, we step away, and that's part of intelligence. And that's why I've been wanting to step away from the mental health system. And Krishnamurti talks a lot about thinking together and moving together as one. All thinking together, not each person thinking their separate thoughts, but thinking and seeing together. And I wonder if the messages out there that a lot of us receive have the same theme or very similar. And I wonder if those messages are thinking together, just waiting for brains to pick up on them and start thinking together with those messages, and also growing and expanding those messages and living as that, not just living in a bunch of words, but what the messages are pointing to. And I think the level of messages and meaning in this other domain of insight and all of that is part of what Einstein was talking about, that the world's problems won't be solved by the same level of thinking that created the problems. And David Bohm said, we need a new source of information. And to me, this is part of the source. I don't know if it's the source, but it is a source that's different. And when we're not thinking about ourselves, we can see something else. There is understanding happening in my brain, not the I. And when I was in this state, when I was writing all this stuff down, I was telling somebody some of things related to my journey and blah, blah, blah. And they said to me that, it sounds like you're a bodhisattva, somebody who delays their enlightenment to come back and help others. And when I was diagnosed, I had the sense that I made a deal with the universe to be a mental patient in order to resolve all the weirdness that was going on regarding whether or not I would continue to exist with all the people that I love. It was like this weird divergence of dimensions and the entities that were included in it. And otherwise, it was like going to be death for me for sure. And so I came back through that. I don't think that necessarily makes me a bodhisattva, but I just wanted to share that to myself, to remember that. And this person was also telling me that someone like Ramana Maharshi, when they became enlightened, they couldn't even feed themselves, or one of those guru people, they had to have somebody feed them, like spoon feed them for months. So these states can be quite non-functional, and even more so for some people who really connect with the ultimate. And I'm not saying that everybody that goes through these states is connecting with the ultimate, but they're connecting with something else other than the me, and it definitely leads to some chaos. So it would be cool to get to a point where one is a bipolar bodhisattva, going through the process of bipolar and coming back to share the wisdom of going through that and making the experience of bipolar into a wisdom tradition, or mapping some of the territory to make it easier for others to traverse the gap and transform and move. And it's a pathless path. Each step is kind of unpredictable. Even when I started this self-dialogue process, I wasn't predicting that I would go to California and then taper off my meds. I was thinking I might go to California, and then I did, and then I was thinking that I would just rest and recoup and have fun in California, but I ended up not having as much fun, but doing the process of coming off meds. And I'm starting to feel the fruits of that these last few days especially. And Krishnamurti says, if you understand, you will give understanding. So hopefully with these self-dialogues, I'm creating some kind of understanding with myself. And it's not ultimate understanding, it's just a different understanding moment to moment, and moving in this field of learning and insight and understanding. Not saying I understand, but a process of understanding that is a continual movement that is also discontinuous in that it's not accumulative. Because if it is, then there has to be a center around which stuff accumulates, and then one is always looking through the lens of everything one has accumulated. And I wonder if after this 1-year process, if my brain could sort of, again, kind of dump all this stuff I've been talking about and start again in a new context, off medication and not really being in the mental health paradigm. It'll be something completely different, perhaps. And again, I can't really predict what that is. And I'm pretty sure I talked about wondering if we can have a manic accent, just like people who learn English, they have a different accent when they speak English, or even different regions of different countries speaking English all sound different, like the East Coast of Canada, or the Southern United States, or England, or Scotland. We all have very different accents. And then even people who are more flamboyant, they have a certain way of pronouncing words and enunciating that is unique. So can we, as people who go into map consciousness, just have a different accent? And it accentuates us in different ways. It makes us flamboyant in different ways, and ways that we weren't, which means it's sort of directing energy to different nerves and muscles and processes that we perhaps haven't had energy directed into before. And that's why it's kind of confusing, because we were one way, and then this energy comes in and breaks up some of our contrived structures and ways of moving, and then all of a sudden we're free and released, and we're moving more elegantly and beautifully. And it actually feels quite nice. It feels very free. I've felt very free in those states. So we might have manic mannerisms, just like macho men might have macho men mannerisms, or very feminine women, or some men who are gay, they're a little bit more flamboyant, or some women who are gay are a little bit less flamboyant, and everything in between. And people don't necessarily have to be in any of those types or categories to even be flamboyant. There can be straight men that are flamboyant. So it doesn't matter about that. I'm just using those stereotypes for illustration purposes. Not that I've really subscribed to any of that per se. I'm actually saying it's kind of cool. Like, if I, as a bipolar person, was seen to have certain mannerisms at certain times because I was expressing certain energies that were coming through me, not a person who is fixed in this way of being all the time. Oh, well, that's how she is all the time. No, it can vary throughout. And usually we just have different moods, like, I'm happy, this is the happy me, and then this is the mad me, and this is the sad me. Well, what if we actually had different energies come in and move us in different ways, more flamboyant or more expressive at certain times, through our whole body, not just our moods and how we're trying to keep it in and pretend we're not mad and pretend we're not sad. Well, what if it was through our whole body? So I think that's cool that people have different mannerisms and ways of moving energy through their body and having energy animate them. And I mentioned improv, which is a dialogue mixed with improv, and using yes and sharing and making meaning together in a more fun way than just sitting around and having dialogue. And again, the universe shows us through map consciousness, and it's up to us to go home and practice, or go back to consensus reality and practice our way home. And we could be teachers of random decontravisions. It's interesting how, if one has ever been in the state of mania, one knows how freeing it feels and how amazing. It's almost like the universe says, here you go, this is what you wanted. You wanted to be your free, original, unique self, completely expressive and not aware of caring what other people think, but at the same time being so amazingly yourself that never comes up as an issue, at least for the first stage of that energetic process. It's just so amazing that one is sharing that energy and amazingness, so one would never purposefully do anything to hurt anybody. And so it's an amazing state, and that's what we're all kind of looking for. Yet, when people go there and really are there for a period of time, it's categorized as a mental illness. Yet, it's almost like the universe says, here you go. And then everybody else in one's life responds as, oh my God, what's wrong with you? Yet one is feeling the most amazing ever. So part of it is the downer and the buzzkill of people around us because they're not in that space too. And the point of that too is though that the universe says, here you go. Now what are you going to do with it? And we usually screw it up. We usually screw it up and fall from grace. And that was the other thing with the bipolar bodhisattva, or the bodhisattva thing in general, was one postpones one's awakening to help others awaken. And I do feel with some of those hard, shock, terrifying experiences, it usually happens when I've gone too far into beauty or too far into flow, and it's shocking me to back down a few levels to where the consensus energy might be. It's like this energetic ceiling that prevents me from going any further. That could be the bodhisattva barrier. And I do feel like being diagnosed with a mental illness can be a path to enlightenment. And cosmic consciousness could be an emergent property of man. And how can we think that regular consciousness is normal or something to be desired? It's actually a state where we're always desiring something else. And when we fall in gravity, the eyes, arms, and legs, they all work together because they have to. If I'm jumping to another rock, my leg doesn't just go flying out to the side. It falls in line with the rock so I land properly while I'm looking at it, etc. And in magic and mania, it's the same way. We're in this field where everything is working together holistically. It's the same as if we were to jump from rock to rock. Our body would know how to do that. So in that state of consciousness, we're jumping from moment to moment and we're moving with it and being animated by it. Just like when we land on the rock is partly animating us. It's making our muscles flex. So when we're jumping from moment to moment. It's making our muscles flex and moving our muscles and moving our body. So this is different when we're in the medium of thought, because thought from moment to moment is somewhere else. And so we're not moving with the moment because part of our attention, a lot of it is not in the moment. But in that way, the body actually has to move in a certain way because we're not paying attention to the moment, so the body becomes more automatic and it's just acting robotically instead of in an animated way. It's sort of on automatic pilot, but this state of mania is not automatic pilot. It's totally different. It's really being in touch with the moment and having it animate us. And this is an amazing quote by Krishnamurti. Is it possible for human beings to bring about a totally different category or dimension of the mind? And I think this is what's happening in map consciousness. It's an energy that's attempting to bring in a totally different dimension or category of the mind. And anyone who's been in that state can feel that and sense that, perhaps. And I feel like it's being squashed. That category is trying to come in to being, that other dimension, and it's being squashed back into the dimensions that we know. It's a richness of dimensions that's coming into being, and that richness is squashed back into time and space and the values of the current society. There's another dimension of humanity that's there in the infinite potentiality. It's in the morphic field, the morphogenetic field. It's converted to mental illness, and it's not allowed and supported and loved to flower. It needs love. It needs curiosity. It needs awe. It needs wonder. It needs space. Can we go from labels to love?